The part of your brain that allows you to experience trauma, stress, and anxiety is the exact part of your brain where you experience gratitude and forgiveness. And your brain it's impossible. You can't do both at the same time.
And you said something earlier that I think is also an important distinction. You said, who am I? Versus a lot of people go, well, that's just how I am.
Yes. So if you're in a state of gratitude, your brain literally cannot experience trauma or anxiety or stress. So one of the things we teach people, easier said than done, takes work, but is very, very doable, is you can't forgive the thing that happened, but you can have gratitude for the shift in your trajectory based on my money. Right? The same thing that leads to the depression leads to their greatness.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. You know, when it comes to health and wellness, so many of us tend to fight our genetics. We just don't know better. We think, oh, I have good genes or bad genes in certain areas and navigate our health with a sense of certainty. But what if we got it wrong? My guest today challenges these notions by encouraging patients to work with their genetics instead of against them. With a commitment to wellness and a background in biotechnology, he co-founded the DNA Company Canada and has devoted much of his career to helping everyday folks like you and I to learn more about our ancestors so we can figure it out ourselves. He's been his own guinea pig, even healed himself, and is here today to help share the wealth of knowledge that he's acquired on everything from DNA, inflammation, longevity, and so much more. Please welcome Kashif Khan. Kashif Khan, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming this way.
Pleasure.
We've spoken in before, but this is the first time in person.
Yeah, it was all online, but it was a different time when everything was online.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been doing a lot. I really appreciate, I'm like, oh, he's getting into he's figured out the algorithm. I really appreciate that you're out there putting out a lot of information, but for you, I want to start with your own story, which led you into your genetic research company, because I found it fascinating. And I've seen where a lot of people that get into things, it's because they had to solve a problem for themselves. Yeah. And it's always, I guess it's always the best.
Yeah. And you'll see in the functional medicine world in general, this is always the story. Somebody was failed by modern medicine. Not that modern medicine fails everybody, but when you're trying to find root cause, it's difficult. The toolkit doesn't apply, right? And so same thing with me. I had eczema so bad that I literally couldn't open my left eye. It was sealed shut, red rash all over my face, psoriasis, gut issues, migraines. So I sought help. And it was the first time I ever asked a doctor, you know, what did I do? Did I eat something wrong? Did I breathe something wrong? And it was the first time I realized that's not what they do. It's not their job. It's like diagnose and prescribe. I didn't know because up until the age of 38, I was never sick. All of a sudden, everything all at once. So that led me down this, you know, naturopathy, traditional Chinese medicine, research, functional medicine, eventually genetics. And that's when I learned there was pieces of my human DNA that were broken, missing, not functioning. And so the exact same choices that I was making, me and my family, friends, were only making me sick. My body's response to things that were seemingly good were not good for me. And that flipped the gears for me, and I became this functional medicine researcher, civilian scientist, and learned everything I could and built a research company.
You were 38?
38, yeah, and biologically tested as 43 at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm 45 and it says 33, so I was able to get time back.
That's amazing. Yeah. What were you doing? What was your real job?
So I ran a consulting business for technology startups. Toronto, where I live, is a very much Silicon Valley North type culture, right? So there's a lot of big universities where Google and Apple are right there headhunting everybody. And so there's a lot of great tech startup type businesses where I was the business advisor, right? Marketing, legal, account, all the things that they didn't even know they didn't know, that was my job. And I ran a great business, did a good job of that, got very sick. And let me give you an example. The reason why I thrived there was I couldn't stop seeking reward. It was never enough. And I didn't know that I was burnt out because my brain was so capable of seeking more, but my body couldn't tolerate it. So reward is sought through dopamine, right? Dopamine is this neurochemical that gives you pleasure, but also reward. Both are senses of satisfaction. And you can map out how you perceive pleasure or reward, both satisfaction, through your genes. So there's a gene called DRD2 that determines the density of dopamine receptors in your brain. So when you actually have that smell, that food, that anticipation, what's the level of intensity you feel? Then there's a clearance protein that removes the dopamine from your brain and eventually come back to your normal baseline behavior, right? So my DRD2 gene has the lowest possible density of receptors. That's my human instruction. And my COMP gene is the fastest possible removal. So when I feel or experience reward or pleasure, it's the absolute minimal experience possible, which made me want to run 10 different companies because whatever I did yesterday was never enough, which made me so good at the work I did, consulting everybody, making sure they all succeeded, but my body gave up. I was burnt out and I had no perception of it at all. And so I had to learn how to structure my time and schedule around what my brain is willing to do, but my body can actually tolerate. And that was one of the big reasons why I was so sick.
Yeah. And that's genetic? Those
Straight,
receptors?
Straight genetic. So this is meant, so there, when I look at genetics, this is where I have a big difference in opinion from traditional genetics. I don't think there's a good or a bad. There's who you are, that design, and what was the intention. This design I have was what we call warrior genetics. Mm-hmm. I am meant to lead the pack forward when there's a calamity. But when it's on all the time in 2025, my human design is from a caveman's era and was not designed for this context, all of a sudden leads to burnout. So the exact same thing that was meant to be my superpower and my gift actually became my kryptonite because I didn't use it for the right purpose. So this is what I now coach pro athletes through and CEOs through is what is your human design? How is your brain wired? And what was that intended for? Go do that, and you're going to use great words like achievement, and go do something else, and you're going to say things like anxiety, depression, burnout. And it's really that simple.
It's funny because I hear that, and of course, you know, we all, if we're honest with ourselves, we sort of know certain traits that we have.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, I wonder if that's also genetic. So if somebody's listening to this and they think, I know I have some traits, and that's the tricky part. They work in our favor and against us all at the same time because they're misdirected. And you get just enough success doing it, then you actually think you know something, and it's easier to ignore the other stuff. So I think you can get into real trouble, which you probably did.
Yep.
So if somebody comes to you, what is the most common? Let's talk about the types.
Sure.
Maybe we could talk about the human design or the genetic traits that sort of seem to be kind of some of the more dominant ones, and how one would approach the best marriage of those traits and your physical well-being.
So we have a really cool perspective because we run this telemedicine-based functional medicine practice. We get to see a lot of people, right? And the challenge is we see people that need help, that are stuck. So we get to see why people get stuck. So there's a general population data. Mm-hmm. What does the world look like and who's unique? And then there's when you have a room full of people that are sick, ill, stuck, or biohackers that are trying to live forever, what are they wired like? And you see the data completely flips. So let me give you an example. There's a neurochemical called serotonin, which we refer to as the happy hormone, which really doesn't drive how happy you are. The happiness or your mood is an outcome of what it's doing. So serotonin allows your brain to prioritize stimulus. So we're sitting here chatting. Do we focus, or do I notice the books in your bookshelf? Am I looking at the beautiful mountains, which nobody can see, but they're really beautiful outside the window? My brain's ability to pay attention to what it's supposed to. Now, when your receptors are too short, genetically predetermined, and you don't make enough, genetically predetermined, then you can't have enough to activate that priority mechanism in your brain at any given moment. So you see more. Now imagine living in this world at a higher level of detail than your peers, right? All of a sudden, everything is irritating, frustrating, annoying. Everyone's disappointing. We said it was going to be purple. It was going to be on Thursday. And it was going to be on a 42-degree angle. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Here it is. We finished it, but none of that is necessary. And truly believing and perceiving that that's correct. And the other person believing they're correct. Now, when we deal with people that are stuck, it's like, I've done every supplement. I've done every therapy. I've been to my functional medicine doctor. The first place we always go is nervous system. And I would tell you that this trait I just described, about 5 to 7% of people, right, meant to be leadership genetics. Mm-hmm. I will notice and I'll protect you, right? That's what it's meant to be, right? The bush is rustling, animal coming, I will see it first and I'll make sure nobody gets hurt. When you put it into our current context where there's so many things to notice, this is where we see people with what we call high functioning anxiety. So this fire in my belly, can't stop. You don't know what you're doing. Give it to me. I'll fix it. Helicopter mom, right? Which leads to a cortisol addiction, which is I feel guilty because I'm resting right now, right? Can't sit. Always what's next on the to-do list. Always picking up the phone, picked it up, put it up, down, picked it up, right again, right? So that level of cortisol addiction. And when I look at a group of, say, 100 people, which we do commonly, by the way, in like groups of, healing, let's say, 60 to 70% of them has been the average over the last 3 years of me doing this, will always have this trait.
Really?
when the general population is 5 to 7. They're stuck because their nervous system is making them stuck. They're fried with cortisol. They're noticing too much. Even when the doctor tells them what to do, they're reading in between every line that didn't need that level of effort, right? And so frying your nervous system from high cortisol is one of the reasons why people are so stuck. And if they don't do that first, the other stuff doesn't work because they're stuck in fight or flight.
Is the phone where everything, even though it's fake, that imminent threat, that near focus threat, because we're not really meant to be living that way, right? It would be like, oh, it's off in the distance, it's moving closer.
Yeah.
Now it is a real threat versus we pick up our phone and people make a comment or whatever, and our physiology doesn't really decipher.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly going, it's a threat, it's a threat, it's a threat. Has this obviously accentuated this?
In a huge way. So you have to know that our DNA hasn't changed in 250,000 years. So we are wired like people of 250,000 years ago. Nothing has changed. There's been variants that have been like a Russian roulette passed around, but there's been no evolution. So if that's the case, the majority of that time, what did it look like? Not today, right? So we have this rapid change in how we live in the last 100 years with no change to how our biology will receive it. And your biology is, like you said, assuming everything is an imminent threat because of the how you're receiving it, versus how we were supposed to, right? So yeah, everyone is stuck in this fight or flight mode, and then you take the context, even the political, financial, all the stuff that's going on, right? Too many things to bounce between, and then you take EMF, which is going to cause neural inflammation. Then you take the mold, so it adds up, and then overwhelming the biology, and people are stuck.
I'm always curious because one of the things I talk a lot about here is I really, for whatever reason, have always felt like understanding our biology feels really important because it's like you can't ignore it. So this idea, you talk a lot about sunlight. And I always say, if you had talked to me a year and a half ago, I would have said, oh, nutrition, stress management, and sleep.
Yeah.
But now as I go down a few more holes a little deeper, I'm like, oh, wait a second, sunlight is so important. And so if somebody, you live in Toronto, not easy. You got long winters, you have, gray days, buildings.
Yeah.
Realistically, because now as I go, and you'll meet my husband later, but he always is on everybody about wearing sunglasses. He goes, listen, if you're on a mountain with white snow, fine. Or if you're in a place where there's some kind of dangerous, riding a motorcycle or something, great, protect your eyes. But otherwise, he's like, the sunglasses are a no-go. Because we're not sending the correct message to our brain, to our skin, and to our hormone system.
Yep.
I'm just curious, as somebody who lives an entire adult life, you do, and you fall into this, when you learn about the importance of sunlight and why, do you think, oh, I never thought about that? And then how do you implement it? Yeah,
so we're constantly learning, right? So we have a unique perspective because we deal with biohackers, pro athletes, celebrities, and we also deal with people that are like struggling with Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, cancer, that are truly stuck. So we see it all. And there isn't anyone that we don't talk to about circadian biology and sunlight and what did your ancestors do? They spent 95% of their time outside. So human design, once again, is designed to receive that. And that signal, even just your circadian rhythm and the clock, your eyes are constantly surveying the environment for both the spectrum of light. Is it red light, blue light, white light, or then red light again in the evening? But also the angle of light. Is it more coming from overhead or the horizon? And you might wonder, why can't I fall asleep when I have all these beautiful pot lights on overhead, giving my brain a noon signal, right? But there are genes that determine who is more susceptible to that. There are genes that regulate circadian rhythm. So some people listening will say it doesn't matter. Some people say, every single time I do that, it feels horrible, because your ability to adjust is also genetically determined. But to your point, the eyes are surveying not only to understand time, but also to understand what chemicals and hormones to produce at any given time. So it's not just about waking and sleeping. So what your husband said about sunlight hitting your eyes, that is a signal to start producing melanin, right? And that's the thing that will protect you. And when you don't get that, you're going out into the sun, blocking the signal, and that's why you may burn, right? And then people say, I can't handle it. When you go to the Serengeti, nobody has Ray-Bans on, right? They don't need it. But just like anything else, you don't start deadlifting 400 pounds on your first day at the gym, right? You need time for any organ or tissue or gland to adapt to what you're doing and changes, and you will adapt.
Yeah. It's funny. We were reading something and how incredible the body is. So you think, okay, well, what about Eskimos,
Yeah.
But there's I'd love to know what you know about it, that there's actually something inside of that type of genetic where they can use the cold to almost create the light or the energy to do the job that the sun normally does.
So cold stress and heat stress will change so you can release a cold shock protein, heat shock protein.
Right.
Both of those will completely change your biology. This is why if you spend 3 days a week in a sauna, there's a 65% reduction in Alzheimer's risk. The sauna doesn't remove Alzheimer's from your body. It upregulates all of the neuroprotective and neurogenesis neurochemicals like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. There's a surge. Because when you're under that level of stress, the body thinks it's a potential source of death. It can't understand why there's so much cold or so much heat, so it actually thinks you're dying. And when you're in that level of stress, you get these heat shock and cold shock outcomes, which drive regeneration and repair, because it doesn't know why you're dying.
Right.
Repair your brain, make new mitochondria, more energy. And the other thing you have to look at is they're not getting the sun, but they eat food that we don't eat, right? Mm. They'll eat blobs of blubber. Yeah. Right. And very rich in vitamin D. Right. So they're getting it from a different place. And so the culture matches the environment, support, and what you need is right there for you. And so what eating local matters, right? Including blobs of blubber. So they're getting it from another source. And as long as you're getting it, right? So they've adapted in another way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was fascinating that for me, part of these conversations around our health is because I really am in awe of what the body's able to do. Yeah. And sometimes I feel like, for example, on the days it's like, I don't want to train, or, you want to eat whatever. It's almost like the miracle that is the body.
Yeah.
It keeps me re-inspired to go, you know what, I should probably take care of this. Instead of, it's so easy to take it for granted because it does its job most of the time and we feel okay most of the time.
Yeah.
But when you really get into things like this, you realize how incredible the system is. And the, even, after having babies and nursing, you think, no, come on. I mean, this is the perfect, needs of what's in the milk is for the environment and all of these things. And sometimes I think we've gotten so disconnected from our own miracle, because people don't feel good or they're busy or all the things. And it's like, no, there's a lot going on here that is so helpful. So you mentioned sauna, and that would be sort of a hack, right?
Yeah.
And we live in a time, because we are so far from our nature, where everyone is hacking all over the place. And we talk a lot about how if you have these sort of first principles down pretty solid, you're getting to bed, you're in the sunlight, you're moving your body enough, you're eating real food, then for me the hacks are like, they make sense. I don't ever think we can usually hack our way to some sort of optimal health. But I'm just curious from your point of view, because people do love hacks, if people are practicing decently first principles for, let's say, health overall, what are the hacks that you actually do like?
The people you listen to, where we get the information from, first thing you have to ask yourself is, the person I'm listening to today, is that where they started? Right? And I think this is where a lot of the biohacks fail. And I know we'll talk about specific ones, but just you got me thinking, when you go listen to the podcast, watch that Instagram post or some YouTube video, the person who's telling you, I just did the stem cell therapy, I cold plunge every day, where are they in their journey? There's an order of operations, right? And if you're still in the acute phase, I have pain, I have breast cancer, mom has Alzheimer's, how do I avoid that? That's a very different context to apply biohacks to.
Yes. Than
the person who's been doing it who won't tell you their story and why they went down that path anyway, right? Where did they start? So I say this because if you haven't dealt with the acute first, before you even get into the optimization stuff, like what supplements take, what food do I eat, how do I exercise, that's not even biohacking yet. That's just baseline being optimal. Mm-hmm. Then you can start seeking life extension and seeking quality increase by biohacking. It shouldn't be about, it's turned into what we were trying to get out of, which is Band-Aids, trial and error, right?
It's a really, really good point.
Yeah. And so that moving away from, I can go do whatever I want and there's a biohack to help me escape my choice.
Yeah.
That would defeats the purpose, right? So get the body, the terrain, like we said, trauma, nervous system, get that regulated, fix your gut, right? Whatever the acute problem is, really deal with that. Now you can seek optimization, which is simply food, exercise, movement. Then when there's no problem to complain about, how do I extend this life?
Yeah.
I think another context question is, what does that even mean? Like, what's the potential?
See, for me, like I hear a lot of these, techie guys or, 120, 150. I have to be honest, as somebody, that interests me zero.
Yeah.
I would like to live until I'm not going to be here, but just free to move and independent.
Yeah. Health span versus lifespan.
Correct.
Quality of life versus time, right?
Yeah.
And so if you look at what is the potential for health span? So in order to answer that, you have to first understand what is aging. So aging is every one of our 50 trillion cells that makes up this human body all has DNA inside, right? Mm-hmm. So DNA is this instruction manual that the cell reads to do work. Like, go be a kidney cell, go be a heart cell, go make hormones. Those are the instructions for all that stuff. It's that little book. So as that book, DNA, gets oxidized, wear and tear, damaged, the cell that surrounds it also starts to experience that a little later. And then it starts to unravel. It doesn't have the same integrity of composition. That's aging. So it starts at oxidation of DNA, wear and tear, then oxidation of the cell, then unraveling. Then you start to see white hair, wrinkles in the skin, because that's the outward evidence of what's happening at the cellular level, right? So if that's aging, we know that your DNA has a protective bumper on either end called a telomere. And this is the thing that's meant to block the wear and tear and take the abuse. That telomere has been studied and proven to be designed as a structure to last 120 years. So the human form is supposed to survive 120 years. And that's the kind of the cap, right? Yeah. And so then you ask the question, well, why don't we get there? Why is the average life expectancy in the United States, I think it's like 78 for women, 76 for men. And if you have this American-centric view, it's hard to answer the question, because the average American gets their first chronic disease at 55, 2 by 65, last 15 years of their life are in treatment. You spend half of your life savings in the last week of your life. That's the American story, right?
Yeah.
Versus the places in the world where the majority of people just die of old age. The top 15 reasons why people die in the United States are all rooted in inflammation. They're disease, right? Number 3 is medical error, which is still rooted in inflammation, right? So go outside and look more like this. Outside the United States, you'll see it's a very different story. People get old, frail, and they die. That's still the number 1 cause of death globally, but the 15 top in the US are all disease. So why do I say this? Because before we start asking, what do I add? Which is the American culture thing. What do I remove that's taken that God-given right of 120 away? What did I do that chipped away at the 120 and got me to 80, 90, or the average American in their late 70s? What did I breathe? What did I eat? Who was I around, right? And if you break it down to the simplest terms, Harvard did a study around centenarians, people that live, and they did 2 studies. And in one of them, they're like, what are the traits? And one of them was, what is the one thing they were doing that we didn't expect? And the traits of somebody that got to 90 with good health, like you said, so not only living longer, but with good health, was they didn't smoke, less than 3 drinks a week. They exercised 3 days a week. They ate whole foods and they weren't obese. And I say this because it's silly that everybody already knows this, but look at our potential. If you just did these things, you go from 78 with disease to 90 dying of old age. So imagine if you always did everything right. Yeah. The other study where they were looking for one thing, they're saying, what's that one thing these people are all doing that we just didn't think would be the case? Some unusual trait. All of them who were 90 plus. So this was actually an older cohort. They were looking for 90 plus, where these ones were 90, right? Mm-hmm. They all had a very low number of high quality relationships. No toxic relationships. Low stress. That was it. The one thing they were all doing.
Low stress.
Yeah. Yeah. It was about people, right? Who are you surrounded by? And not only remove the bad, but add the good, the oxytocin, the love, the all you get from your relationships, right? So that's why I'm saying that if you don't, the foundation, there's so much you can do just with your basic daily habits already. Yeah. After all that's done, that's when you start throwing biohacks at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and you said earlier, it starts also with your nervous system. And when you go back to the relationships, good relationships, you can regulate each other's nervous systems. And so it's interesting though, because you have to be the thing too.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not going to attract a really cool, easygoing, loyal, good listener, friend, honest, loving, if you're not those things.
It's energetic and it's also hormonal, and you're sending out signals. So this is going back to what you said about how cool the human body is, right? And how little we know. There was this research that was done, I think it was in Switzerland, where they took a group of people and they took sweat from just regular everyday activity. And then they took sweat from people that had just gone skydiving. And they got other people to smell it.
Oh.
And when they smelled the sweat of the people that were just doing their daily activity, there was no change. When they smelled the sweat of the people that jumped out of the airplane, their amygdala fired up like they themselves were experiencing that.
Yeah.
So who you surround yourself by will change your biology, right? That's the hormone, but it's also their energy, their frequency, what they're emitting, their mood, that you will feel it, right? So your mitochondria, which we know is this energy production center in your cell, is also a surveying tool. If I'm sitting here, I can tell if somebody's walked up behind me. I don't have eyes on the back of my head, but you can feel it. That's your mitochondria. It's constantly surveying your environment to tell your body what's happening so you can shift your biology before it's a problem, right? Including, what do other people feel? What is their energy level? What is their temperature? What's the flush of their skin? What do their eyes look like? Your body sees it all. We are not consciously aware. For every few hundred bits of information your conscious brain is processing, there's millions being processed in the subconscious at the same time. We can't keep up with that volume and perceive it, right? So what you said is absolutely true, but this is also why people are so important, who you surround yourself by.
This podcast is brought to you by Ritual. Nope, going again. This podcast is brought to you by Ritual. I think all of us are running around, trying to push ourselves through our daily routines and get certain things done, like our exercise, and we're commuting and running kids around and work and all the things that really make up our lives. And I don't know about you, but sometimes this does really impact my ability to switch off and wind down at the end of the day, even when I'm feeling tired. So I started thinking, what if your evening routine got the same treatment, scaffolding, a ritual, if you will, to get you best in position for bed and for relaxation? Well, Ritual's Magnesium Plus puts your evening unwind center stage with a blend of magnesium, bisglycinate, and tart cherry powder for mind and muscle relaxation. An incredible combination. This is what I love about it. It's the right kind of magnesium. Ritual selected a bioavailable form of magnesium, so it's also gentle on your stomach. It is clinically studied to support things like stress for your mind, relaxation. It can even ease leg cramps during pregnancy and provides PMS support. So if you want and you're ready just to find a new way to help get you into that best, place so you get rest and recovery, you can sit back and raise a glass to your new evening ritual with Magnesium Plus. Get 25% off your first month at ritual.com/Gabby. That's ritual.com/Gabby for 25% off your first month, ritual.com/Gabby. Yeah, it's so interesting. I've been with my husband almost 30 years, and we joke, because sometimes I'll say something a certain way and he's like, I think you've spent too much time with me, but it's interesting where if we're fortunate, right, we'll pick those friends and those people where maybe if you have some aligned values, that feels important, but that if they're sort of different enough that they continue to, just by being, help you move into those pockets of your weakness a little more. I think it can be really, really helpful. I'd be interested how your children, because obviously we impact them, but it'd be interesting how everyone's like, oh, they're your greatest teachers. And there's a lot of ways that shows up, but would also be interesting to see physiologically, like. So
yeah, there's two ways. Like for me, I've genetically tested all my children.
Wait, do we have a conversation? This is coming back to me about one of your sons doing homework a certain way because of his genetics.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation maybe almost 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
Maybe before you talk about testing your children, you can just bring that up, because I think this is really important, that, how he concentrates, talking about those neuroreceptors.
Yeah. See, I described myself in terms of dopamine, right? Yeah. He's wired the same. He also has that serotonin dysregulation I talked about earlier, where he perceives more detail. And he had one teacher who said that this kid has ADHD. And I said, he doesn't. This is what I work on and I'll figure it out. And I have all my kids, my niece, my friend, my cousin's kids, they've all been genetically tested. And so it's not just they're not bionic babies, but I understand how they process hormonally. I know who they're going to become. I already know what sports they're going to be good at because I know what their hormonal design is. I know what they're going to look like physically, right? I know what foods they metabolize the best. So I can give them the benefit of all of that.
Well, you got to give me an example of a type with a sport, for example.
So for example, so there's a misconception that when you go to the gym and you see that guy that's, bench pressing a few hundred pounds, that's testosterone. That's actually estrogen. So the mass and the strength, that bulky muscle fiber comes from estrogen. The androgens or testosterone will give you lean muscle fiber, and dihydrotestosterone, the really potent stuff, will give you all that striated, rippled fiber, right? So I know between my 3 kids that my middle son is much more estrogenized. So he needs to be he's in wrestling and he wants to get into football, which is exactly what he's going to be, like a linebacker, right? Whereas I know my daughter is highly androgenized. So she's, gymnast, strength training, resistance training. She's going to have the endurance, strength, and the sort of wiry frame, where my son's going to be big and bulky. I already know who they're going to become, and they're like 7 and 9 years old, right? And I've been through this with my 16-year-old who was put into he loves sports, so he's put into basketball because that's exactly who we knew he was going to become, and he did, right? Both here, cognition and ability to work with a team, also physically.
Are there kids that test out better as individual athletes?
Oh, for sure.
Because I have more, I'm very much like a team person.
Yeah.
And I live with 3 people that are much more individual athletes.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
So there's traits around how you process emotion, right? So some people when they remember information. Some people remember what things feel like. And there's actually genes that will determine what information you imprint and therefore what you recall. And so we can predict who recalls emotion, and therefore their decision-making tool is emotion, right? And so they much more care about how other people feel, and they're much more purposeful when it comes to a team, right? Versus other people are too dry and cold, or feel like they're insensitive, feel like they don't care. And none of that is true. They perceive themselves as caring. They just don't value that information as a decision-making tool, right?
Yeah.
So 2 different people, one flourishes on a team and one is like an outcast, right? Because of one trait, but we can go into many, many traits. I mentioned BDNF as a neuroplasticity driver from sauna, right? It also dramatically affects your mood, because if your BDNF genes are suboptimal, you don't do such a good job of processing new impactful type information. You're a bit slower to say learn, and it's not an intelligence thing. In fact, people with lower BDNF levels and lesser neuroplasticity are often perceived as more intelligent because they're masters at what they do.
So they remember things very well, but they sort of move into it slower?
They're more master versus jack of all trades.
Roger that.
Right? So now when someone is wired that way, everything means more. Drama queen response to everything. Very hard to be on a team.
Would you say that they're more, like, I have a very close friend, he's a beyond literal listener.
Yeah.
Right? Like literal listener, literal speaker, remembers everything he reads.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So that's a trait where the things that you experience mean more, you're more rigid in your beliefs, and it's taken much more literally, right? Versus somebody who has very flexible neuroplasticity that can think at a higher level more conceptually, isn't feeling the weight of the information and can stray from it a little bit, versus this, right? Blinders on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Single gene can drive that trait. But yeah, so and we do this work with teams. We show them who should be the captain, who should,
And do you think even positionally, where, for example, a quarterback or a pitcher is going to be dealing with a different kind of pressure, and some people actually really thrive in that, where maybe a catcher is a guy who's got to be sort of the general in a different way. So you're talking about even all those
within
traits. That.
I started doing this work.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is great. Yeah. So I started doing this work corporate, which was board, right? Executive team. Who's the accountant? Who's the CEO? Like, truly, who has the wiring for that? And it was team formation, and it was awesome. We did it in our own company, right? So, for example, I mentioned my dopamine profile, which is highly reward seeking, highly anxious, always what's next. One of our co-founders is literally polar opposite. Maximum dopamine and slowest possible clearance.
So you just
Yeah, so where I was always like, meeting done, 10 action items, go, go, go. He was like, meeting done, I'm on Facebook looking at vacations, right? Because he lived in contentment. It was just so easy to get reward and satisfaction for him. But because his clearance was so slow, where I was always like surface level, do this, do this, do this, he would pick one thing and binge. And he'd come back with a stack of paper like this. So he was wired for that specialist expert type thinking. And I was wired for the generalist, let's do it all thinking. Now, once we discovered that, amazing collaboration.
Yeah.
But prior to that, constant friction. Constant.
It's so funny how when I work with somebody like that too, like she can spend some time in the details where I'm like, I can't. I sort of look out and say, okay, all these things, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm so grateful. That's the other thing you learn is when you can realize that how you can dance together and complement each other, that you can do such a more complete job in whatever you're offering in your business or what have you. So is there anything that you've learned through this process? It must be kind of amazing to you and your family, like your parents, that you were in one direction and your whole life that you're in this field. Yeah. It's so fascinating. But is there anything that has really surprised you about yourself going through this process that you're like, I could have gone my whole life not knowing that about myself?
So I think that the trait of my neural map or wiring, it doesn't matter what job or career or business, I would have been the same person in that thing, right? It would have been a leadership role. It would have been a overanalyzing the details, seeking perfection role. It would have been a risk-taking, let's build it bigger and faster role. And it would have been leading with the heart, this is purpose to me type role, right? I'm wired that way. It's literally warrior genetics. I meant to protect the tribe. So it doesn't matter what I did. This is what I would have done with it. Now, my health and wellness being this thing that stopped me in my tracks, and then me remembering my dad died when I was 17, and I had to take care of my mom and my sister and literally start paying the bills. And I had just gotten sick and just had my first kid. It's like, I'm not going to do that, right? So it became a sense of purpose. And when I started to heal my mom, and I started to get my anxiety-induced niece who couldn't go to school back to school, right? I would tell you that the big thing that really drove a sense of purpose for me was when I got into sort of genetic research, I saw that there was a need to apply it to people. So geneticists did a good job of understanding it academically, right? Nobody sat there with anybody and reviewed it. Unless it was a rare genetic trait, like, sorry, you have cancer because of this gene, which is, by the way, there's different ways to think about that. I was going to say,
and
it's the wrong way to think about it. There's so much deeper we can go functionally. So in that, what I realized is I actually need to go meet with clinics and people and teams and whatever, and actually apply this stuff to learn a combination of their genes plus their environment, nutrition, and lifestyle, the total story, why they got to where they got to, and not only do medical research, which is study disease in sick people, but also study healthy people and find out why didn't they get sick with the exact same problematic pathways. They're fine. So what did they do right? And the very first thing I studied was breast cancer. So I partnered with this clinic in Toronto where 80% of their patient population was women with their second, third, fourth bout of breast cancer, trying to understand the why to all this. And when going back to what I said about sense of purpose, that was the first time I realized that my first marriage, wife with breast cancer, my mother, hysterectomy, my niece can't go to school, my sister learning disability, like every woman that was close to me was sick, right? And I realized that my male family were not. And then I started to see the failure of our healthcare system, and the most broken part was everything around women's hormone health. I didn't know that going into it. I believed what everybody else believed. Menopause is supposed to suck. PMS is bad. Infertility is just a crapshoot. Who knows, right? And so I studied that first, because when I started recruiting through clinics, everybody that who is stuck that you can't figure out, give them to me. Yeah. It was always women. Always, right? That became my purpose. That I started to learn that women weren't included in medical research.
Well, I was going to say, right? Till 1993 or something, right?
Yeah. And even then, it's like postmenopausal women to remove the period from the story, right? There's still a cycle, but there's no period. And still, the stuff that was studied in 1993, a lot of that still isn't available at a doctor's office. It takes 27 years on average for medical innovation to land on a doctor's office from the time it starts, which is silly, except for one innovation we had a couple years ago, which came pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
Everything else takes 27 years. So having said that, I learned that this whole part of the world is broken. 80% of dementia is in women, 80% of autoimmunity, 80% of anxiety, 80% of lupus. That number just keeps going. And so I sought out to figure out what's going on. And one of the big things was this story of nervous system dysregulation, where that level of stress in an androgenized form is responded to with warrior mode. Go protect, go fight, go build. When you take that level of stress and throw it on an estrogenized context, it turns into warrior mode. Stay back, protect the tribe, store some fat, engage the nervous system, look for problems. Those were the roles. And now this, going back to the question you asked me about biohacking, the same failure that we saw in the medical space is also happening in the biohacking world. Picture it. It's an industry designed by men for men.
Yeah.
Who are the people that you listen to, that you see cold plunging and red lighting and all that stuff? I'm not saying that stuff is bad. I do it all, right?
Yes.
But there's a way to do it for each individual, and half the population isn't being served.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the big lesson I learned. And that to me became a sense of purpose, which is the need for bio-individuality for women and all these tools being recontextualized in a 28-day cycle, which now it is possible to do.
Right. Because men have their cycle in 24 hours
Yes.
and we have ours in 28.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I also feel like we live in a time and we have, I was just talking to a woman I know, she's probably in her 60s, Armenian, very smart, very strong. But man, they just take it on. Dinner for 30, okay, clean the house, great, work, great. There never's a crack. It's an interesting thing where women, we have these systems that are so complex and in a way so strong and fragile.
Yeah.
And intricate and delicate and sort of, the timing of things.
The timing is very important.
When would you put stress on the system? It would be great over here, but not great the week before. All these little things. And also, I know it's part of the deal as far as like taking care of a family and all those things. But then culturally, I'm not sure. I know we used to be in a village. Mm-hmm. And I think women would step in and help one another quicker. But if you're a strong woman now, I got it. Do you need help? No, I'm good. Yeah. Instead of like, actually, I am good and I am strong and I do need help. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a lot of this in these systems that I think makes it even harder on our health. Yeah. And it's also it's not a blanket statement women, right? When you look at the genetics of female hormones, we thought we were going to come up with an infinite amount of profile because there's 4 billion women on the planet apparently, right? And it really came down to 6, which we didn't know we were going to learn. That of the thousands of women. So I spent 3 years studying 7,000 people to come to the insights we have. So one by one solved all their problems, from breast cancer to hair loss to you name it, right? And so hands-on, getting them to the finish line. It's just so interesting because you're really just a byproduct of we've lived a certain way long enough that now we need people like you who can test our DNA to go, okay, what are you able to navigate and what are you not able to navigate? Because even you saying something like eczema, which is very common, and people think it's a life sentence. I mean, I'm sitting across from you, your skin is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
No, I'm just saying you have incredible skin. But for someone who's dealing with eczema, it feels, it feels impossible.
So it felt impossible for me. Right. It was part of what, and especially when you go seek medical help.
Yes.
And you're told you have it.
Yeah, you have it.
It's you have it. Right. And I believe that because me and my business partner, we were the same age, same ethnic background. We lived on the same street. We worked in the same office. We ate lunch together every day. We had the same number of kids. Right. Like we had the identical.
All the same stressors.
Yeah.
I remember this though. There was a construction site at your office.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember because I got tested a few years ago with your company and I had the same thing that you talked about you had, which is you can deal with sort of your own junk created by your body pretty well, but you cannot deal with external toxins. And I have that same thing where apparently I don't deal with them as well.
Your detox system works in phases. Yeah. And first phase is defense. Don't let things in. And my body doesn't do that, right? Then there's removal, and then there's neutralizing. There's like turn it into urine, poop, and sweat.
Yeah.
Those are all steps. And you can examine your biology or investigate to figure out which step or multiple steps are broken. The big one for me, that this was a difference between me and my business partner, where we had the same life, yet I had 5 chronic diseases, he had 0, which is why I truly believe doctors when they said you have this, because if it was something I was doing, why didn't he have it?
Right.
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 So here's the thing that opened my eyes to bio-individuality. There's a gene called GSTM1, which is like the first line of defense for your gut. So glutathione is this antioxidant that your body uses to neutralize and clear toxins head to toe. It's instructed by different genes for different parts of your body. So there's a separate instruction for your gut. That gene, there's a unique phenomenon called a copy number variation, where it's not even about what version of the gene, but I have 0 copies. The gene doesn't exist in my genetic code. That's like reading a book and there's a page missing. So that job doesn't happen. I don't have a detox system in my gut, so I can't take for granted that the plastics, chemicals, additives, whatever actually get removed. So I had an exhausted, leaky gut, which led to the leaky brain and depression, right? It led to the eczema, which then led to my body deploying antibodies, which led to psoriasis, which is autoimmune. And this was not the only thing. I was also burnt out, like I said. So the body's resilient. It's not designed to be sick. A lot of levers have to be broken for things to go wrong, right? And that's where I was at. And finally, as you get into your late 30s, your mitochondria start to deplete. There's less cellular energy, and whatever you could tolerate in your 20s, you can't tolerate anymore.
Right.
And all of a sudden it becomes symptomatic. So yeah, so that's where even your relationship with the environment, we're all unique in how we respond.
Yeah,
right.
And I thought that was important because, I mean, I'm 55. I think I've been fortunate in a few ways. I grew up in a more remote area in the Virgin Islands, so air, water. I met my husband at 25, lived part-time on Kauai, and then we live here. It's still at least a little more space. I mean, you're still getting EMFs and all the things that you're getting, but you sort of realize that even just a little bit of space, I think, is easier on your system overall than being in kind of densely populated areas. But when I was so glad to get that blood work to know, hey, listen, even if you think, to your point, I'm doing a lot of the right things, not perfect, but this is a blind spot, or this is something your body doesn't do well, and just knowing that. So I have some other areas I want to go, but before, I really want to define for people clearly, if they want to get tested, just right here and now, I want to make sure that we cover how they can, get in touch with you guys and get tested. And also, are there levels of tests? Are there basic if they get, their results and they want to test something more? Like, what does it look like? So
I built this genetic research company. I don't run it anymore. And intentionally, because I got it to a certain place where it was this sort of biohacking brand, longevity brand, working with pro athletes, etc. But I wanted to make an impact on the healthcare system. So I merged with this telemedicine company and said, I built it. Now you guys turn it into, like, how do I see this in a hospital one day? Right? So they're doing that right now. So right now, like, literal answer is my personal website allows people to engage in just getting a test, and I'll send you those links, right? Getting a test to self-discover, read everything. And if you do everything the report says, you will become that optimal version of you, right? It's like plugging all the gaps and holes in your DNA and purging the things you didn't even know you didn't need that you were doing that your body really wasn't benefiting from, and adding the exact things you did need. But beyond that, most of the people we interact with us work clinically. So it's more like, okay, I got my DNA, but I want someone to guide and coach me, right? And then we can consider your unique context where you live. Like, where you live is very different than somebody sitting in New York, where we'd have 2 very different answers for those people, right? Your actual blood work history. And then sometimes it is gut microbiome testing or toxin testing, and diving deep into other areas where your biology will inform root cause, right? Not symptom. If somebody comes to me with ALS, thank you for telling me. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to fix your ALS. But if we do all this work, you might wake up one day and say, I don't feel like I have ALS anymore, right? But that was never my promise. But for some reason, that's always the byproduct.
Yeah. What about the nervous system? Like someone who's had, because I can't help but think sometimes when I see people that are maybe overweight and they try a lot of things and they can't seem to get rid of it. It feels like some of it is some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
And then the nervous system, how do you tackle that part?
Yeah. So do you know where you hear that a lot is women that transition into menopause that say, I don't know where this weight came from. And I'm riding the bike, I'm eating better than ever, and there's more weight than ever, and it's fat, right? So cortisol, just like you said, is stress hormone response, right? Was not meant to be always engaged the way it is today. And so here's one example, and we can talk about many. As you're transitioning into menopause, we know there's a drop in estrogen levels. It's not quite the drop we're led to believe it is, but it's there, right? There's a drop. Your body responds, brain, heart, bone, areas that are really sensitive to needing estrogen for longevity, by increasing the volume of receptors. So it's like, let's start scavenging for whatever's left. That's what the body does. So there's about a 30 to 40% increase in receptor density to make up for that drop in estrogen, right? So cortisol and estrogen fight over the same receptors. So if you went into menopause with anxiety, stress, high functioning anxiety, overloaded schedule, all the American culture stuff, estrogen failed, receptors increase, flooded with cortisol. And now you over exaggerate that stress you're in, and cortisol is a signal to store fat here on your belly. Because if you're in high stress, once again, your body thinks one of two things are happening. If it's chronic and ongoing, you're either in battle, that's the only thing that you would lose this level of control and have this kind of enduring stress, or there's famine. And both of those require fat on the belly, right? Need to survive. And so, when we're dealing with weight loss, calories and movement are usually the last place we go. We usually actually tell people to increase calories. They're just eating the wrong calories. So we'll first look at genetic propensities towards various macros. I want to be a vegan. Good. Can you actually make the enzymes to break down a bean or a lentil and turn it into the amino acids and fuel you need? Maybe not. Right?
What if they want to be a vegan and they have that situation? So
that's exactly it. The choices are always this. Don't do the thing you can do, or add something to upregulate your biology because you need to do it. So there's never a you can't do this. So if someone says, I have the worst genetics because there's a gene called FUT2, which is a methylation gene. We heard this term methylation, and it does a lot more than just what we hear it does. It also helps you make enzymes to break down food. So the FUT2 gene, if you have a optimal version of it, then you do a good job of breaking down beans, lentils, chickpeas, and also leafy greens. That's another area that gets stuck for some people. But that same gene pathway, if your ancestry did this good job of thriving off of plant foods, our ancestors didn't go to Whole Foods and buy a bundle of celery, right? They would grow it, and it was too much to eat at harvest time, so they would have to store it, which means it was pickled and fermented.
Right. So
the other genetic trait we see of people that have a good enzyme profile for plant foods is they don't do a good job of managing the diversity of their gut microbiome. Because there's an anticipation that you ate fermented food and you didn't need that.
Right.
And so that's why I'm saying there's no such thing as a good or a bad gene. It's more about what is the instruction that your body is receiving and what is your context, and are those aligned? So the person with the bad FUT2 needs more fermented food, needs more probiotic support, but also doesn't, they might also need enzymatic support. So we can figure out, what does the gene do? What do we remove? What do we add? And you choose how do I want to live?
Yeah.
And then you can just choose what to add and delete to be that person.
Yeah.
Right.
So I know we jumped away from it, but we sort of said, in all of these thousands of women, I thought there was going to be all these types, and we sort of landed on, I think you said 6 or 7. Maybe we can go back to that, because that was.
Yeah. So we kind of named the profiles because they didn't exist anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so
How do you do that? Are you guys get drunk in the office one day and be like, oh, what about this?
It wasn't drunk. It was actually, to be honest, a bucket of butter chicken.
Really?
So, my mom cooked lunch, and we sat there on a whiteboard and we were just scribbling away. And that went on for weeks. Right. So that was literally what was going on. This is way back when we're like working off of my dining table.
Yeah.
Right. So the concept of estrogen dominant is already spoken of in common, I should say.
Yes.
So that's one of the big profiles. Estrogen dominant, androgen dominant, co-dominant, which is the unusual profile that people don't talk about. And that means the truth of both of these is also true here. Everything that's true about estrogen dominant, the good and the bad, everything that's true about androgen dominant, the good and the bad, are both happening here, right? Wow. Then there's estrogen balance, androgen balance, and simply balanced. Now for these 6, now this part is to some degree known, but it wasn't understood that we could actually discover. I could test a 5-year-old girl and tell you this. We didn't know that we could predict, right? It was more of a response to how you feel.
Yeah.
Now to each one of these, there's micro buckets, which is where the problems come from. So what we hear medically is if you're estrogen dominant, you have greater propensity for A, B, C, D, like problems, fibromyalgia, endometriosis, which isn't entirely true. It's if you're estrogen dominant and you're estrogen toxic.
Got it.
So you're making too much estrogen, but the form you're making is inflammatory. That's where we see this profile creating a problem. But if you're just estrogen dominant, it's beautiful hair, beautiful skin, great fertility, great feminine energy, all that stuff, right? So that's the layer that was missing, was the metabolites of the hormones, which still today most doctors don't test for. If you get a functional test like a Dutch test, you're going to learn this stuff, but the typical blood work doesn't really dig deep enough.
And so someone can get all of this tested with the company?
Yeah, the gene profiles that speak to your propensity.
Yeah.
Now, based on what you've been doing, somebody might say, my report says I'm wired for addiction, but I'm not an addict.
Right. I had some of this in the test, and based on my lifestyle, I sort of had either not went away from some of the genetic tendencies.
Yeah. And so that's exactly it. You're a perfect example of what I was saying earlier, which is here's the profile, here's your biology. Something needs support. The support is either don't do what you're not wired for or add exactly what you need. And you're doing a lot of that stuff already.
Yeah.
Right. But the goal is to just make it concise. What does my book of habits look like?
Yeah.
Right. What is the exact things I need to do to be my optimal best? And what are the exact things I need to avoid? And it's not intuitive for everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by Timeline. For me, taking care of my body, it goes way beyond just working out and eating clean. It's about so many other things. And it's also about supporting my energy and recovery at a deeper level, which is why I've added something new to my daily routine, MitoPure gummies from Timeline. I've taken Timeline in other forms, but the gummies, I have to say, are a little extra fun. They're the first ever longevity gummies powered by urolithin A. And what they do is pretty incredible. These gummies help improve energy, but at the cellular level. So instead of chasing the next energy drink or quick fix, you're actually building sustainable energy from the inside out. Since I started taking them, I just feel even better, stronger, more steady, and able to recover faster. So it's a small daily habit that's making a big difference. Plus, they're vegan, gluten-free, taste amazing. It is fun. It feels like almost like a treat, and are super easy to work into your routine. I keep them on my kitchen counter in my cabinet just so I never forget them. If you want to stay strong and energized now and as you age, you've got to try MitoPure gummies. My friends at Timeline are giving you 20% off just for being here. All you have to do is head to timeline.com/Gabby to get started. That's timeline.com/Gabby, timeline.com/Gabby. Your cells will thank you. So let's, environment, air filters. Like for you, it's the nervous system. You sort of deal with that. Now, I think people, when they think of nervous system, it's a little bit like the microbiome, right? It feels big and vast and confusing and a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
When you guys are dealing with people's nervous system, as far as like stressors, dealing with, environmental stressors, emotional stressors, schedules, things like that, what are the things all that go into the formula when considering the nervous system?
I would say step one and a big, which sounds not what people would think, but it's who am I? And it's no longer about right and wrong and walking into a room and being frustrated, but it's just perception. There's things happening and 5 people in a room are seeing 5 different things because of the neurochemicals of your brain that create a different lens. Yeah. And when people see their lens, I am a binger, I am an addict, I give things more meaning, I use emotion as a decision-making tool, I see more detail, I see less detail. You start to understand the friction that may have been caused between you and someone else. And you now understand how there's a symbiosis as opposed to a friction, right?
Yeah.
So that's step one for everybody, is a realization of who am I and starting to use the tool for its benefit as opposed to it hurting you. Step two is we usually just directly focus on the vagus nerve. So as opposed to trying to like supplement or talk therapy your way through things, trauma, for example, how many people are like a decade into talk therapy and don't feel any different? Because it's not a mood issue. It's a physiological act. It's like trying to talk to a broken arm and fix it. It's broken, right? So it's physiological. And the way trauma works is this gene pathway called ADRA2B. And this is funny because you talked earlier about how your kids receive your biology, and we didn't get into that, but this is one of those examples. ADRA2B drives that adrenaline response that is when the trauma is created. So when there's a high adrenaline does two things. It gives you more. So you're bigger, stronger, faster to deal with whatever's going on because of the adrenaline. Second thing, it signals to your body time to record information because this is a source of threat. Need to remember. Yeah. So, and like I said, some people remember information, some people remember emotion. So that single gene pathway, if you're wired that way to retain more information, the gene pathway expresses during the moment of trauma. And trauma is the only gene expression that I know of, at least, that when your body turns it on, it doesn't know how to turn it off. Everything else, if I walk into a factory with chemicals, my detox genes are going to kick up to high gear until I stop smelling the chemicals. Then they go back down. If I start running, I'm starting to, like, my blood's going to flow. I make more nitric oxide. Gene expression is temporary so long as you're exposed to whatever the thing is. Trauma on stays on. It's physiological. It's a gene expression issue. So the second thing we do with people is vagus nerve work and recognition that the part of your brain that allows you to experience trauma, stress, and anxiety is the exact part of your brain where you experience gratitude and forgiveness. And your brain it's impossible. You can't do both at the same time. So if you're in a state of gratitude, your brain literally cannot experience trauma or anxiety or stress. So one of the things we teach people, easier said than done, takes work, but is very, very doable, is you can't forgive the thing that happened, but you can have gratitude for the shift in your trajectory. They stole my money, right? They stole my money. That's wrong. But I'm so happy this happened then because the stakes are going to be so much bigger later. And now I have this battle scar and I know these type of people will never hurt me again. That can create gratitude, right? And in gratitude, trauma is off. So that's the physiological shift, is the resolving the thing that your body still thinks is a threat and convincing your body it's not a threat anymore. It's source of gratitude. Second thing is to hack this and move it along a little faster. The vagus nerve sits right here, right? Goes all the way down to your gut, all over your body. This is the command center for your nervous system. And we now know, neuroscientists have studied, you can measure the frequencies of the mind. When you're happy, sad, mad, what is the actual frequency you're emitting? And you can take some of the beneficial frequencies and embed them back. And if your vagus nerve receives them, it believes that's what's happening. And then your entire nervous system starts to do that. So there's tools like the HULIS, the Apollo Neuro, Pulsetto, Muse. There's all these great nervous system regulating tools which will send frequency into your vagus nerve and convince your body that that's the truth. And now you go face that thing, and intellectually you still notice this person's a trigger, but it doesn't feel like an 8 out of 10. It's more like a 2 out of 10. So it's intellectual now. It's no longer emotional. So that combination is how we pull people out of it. But then we can get into like addiction, anxiety. There's every one of these issues has unique solutions, but none of them need to necessarily be a pill. And going back to the thing I was saying, your question earlier about how our children change, epigenetic expression. So our DNA doesn't evolve. We haven't seen evidence of this in humans. There's no shift. There's no new evolution. But what we do pass on is expression. So if you went through something significant, your body will measure, and we don't know what that scoring system is, but there's some level of this needs to be passed on. And so your children will be born with the expression already on. And that lasts 7 generations.
But it's not always the good stuff.
No. It's meant to give them what they need in the environment that your body believes they're going to be born into, right? And this is, you have the cliche of the neurotic American Jewish person. Right?
I have a lot of friends.
So where does that cliche come from?
Well, we always say that it feels like high alert.
Yeah. And so there has been studied proof of the expression of trauma genes being on as if you're still in a Holocaust.
Yeah.
Right? When something that significant happens, your children inherit the benefit of being able to survive it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's going to stay on for another 4 more generations. We're into number 3 now, right?
That part's really fascinating. I went to this gentleman here in Santa Monica. I have, playing ball a long time, my knees, right? But I have some stuff going on with my quads that, like, I've tried a lot of things. I have a lot of great mentors or people in the field where it's like, dry needle it, grind it, massage it, do all the million things. And a friend of mine got me this session with this guy who basically, you sort of give him a little bit of your background, and then you do these breathing exercises with him, and he tips you forward and backwards. And I've actually not taken like a hallucinogenic journey of any kind yet in my life. I think eventually maybe I will. Yeah. But this was as close to that. He tips you back, and all of a sudden, right before you lean back, you think, I'm not in control, and you spin back and forward, and involuntary weeping, that you feel the release, from your tissue. But he said to me at the end of it, and I shared with you that my family's from Trinidad on my dad's side. He goes, I don't know. Maybe when my father died, young. And he said, thank your father, that you're okay now. And he also said, you feel like you're carrying your that's why you have these old man wooden legs. He goes, it feels like you're carrying something from your grandfather's side. Maybe it was growing up as a young, educated. He went to medical, not practice, but he sort of did his residency in Boston. Yeah. As a light-skinned black man from Trinidad. Like there's sort of this very, like, I'm going to stand. Yeah. And I joke, I'm a Capricorn, like everything. He's like, Gabby, you're using your legs for everything. He goes, why don't you use your wings, Oh, wow. But I remember thinking I could take some of that in, because some of it didn't feel like me. Yeah. This stiffness, this kind of bracing always for everything. Yeah. And so I remember thinking, it's so funny what's ours and what isn't, and how that can be so confusing. Yeah, it's an innate survival tool. Yeah. That's temporary, assuming you're going to live the same life, right? And then you don't, and it's not a useful tool anymore, right? I'm a tall blonde chick, I'm not a, I mean, that's oversimplification, but I remember thinking it's so funny what people were navigating is what's mine, what's yours, what isn't real, even this notion of our perception, and you said something earlier that I think is also an important distinction. You said, who am I? Versus a lot of people go, well, that's just how I am. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think being able to be clear and honest and okay with, well, who am I? Because once I feel like we can look at that and not be afraid of that, the good, the bad, the ugly, versus then just lending it to, well, that's just how I am. Yep. I had you just kind of mention some notes before you got here about things that felt important to you. Mapping out your mind. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that. Yeah, I think, so this goes back to the thing that is the initial blocker for everybody, which is the thing you just said, who am I, right? Yeah. So there's a such thing as depression. There's a such thing as anxiety. There's such things as neurochemical imbalances, say. But the vast majority of people that use those words that are told that's the answer, it's not what's happening. Right? Yeah. It's your gut, it's your superpower that is being in the wrong context. So when we discover who we are, like that was me, that was half of my healing journey. I had 5 chronic diseases and I thought I had them. And that was my, who am I? I don't have any. And my biological age has been reversed. And I didn't know I had that capacity in me, right? And I do. So it's, in simplest terms, if you have a Ferrari, it's beautiful, but if you go off-roading in the mud, it's not going to work out so well, right? So who am I? And the mud feels bad, but you are a Ferrari. Go do what you were designed to do, and it's going to be amazing, right? And that's what I do now. Now I'm highly entrepreneurial. I use my tool, but structured. I have the right people around me to make sure I don't burn myself out, right? Yeah. So structure and awareness and structure. So I think that's the big one. And having done it with pro athletes, celebrities, and CEOs and all these types of people, it's like the same exact profile that leads to addiction also leads to their greatness. Right? The same thing that leads to the depression leads to their greatness. And they're teetering on the edge of either one all the time. It's just having the right habits day to day that
unlock their superpower and use it for its benefit, as opposed to push it into the thing that feels like addiction, depression, burnout.
Yeah. How do you manage the impulse that is natural to you, which is to go, the next one?
Yeah.
What framework is it like pretty rigid framework that you put around?
So I've learned that me as a low dopamine responder, that brain, anybody who's that wired that way, prioritizes by what is needed. The high dopamine responder prioritizes by what it wants, desire over need. So I know that the thing that'll get me is the opportunity, right? The second thing that I know about this trait is I prioritize by outcome. The low dopamine brain sees the goal, the outcome. What am I going to get? The high dopamine brain prioritizes by the process. Give me a clear instruction and a deadline and leave me alone. So now that I know that about myself, that I'm always going to be distracted by the next outcome, and I'm always going to be wanting to need to fix everything around me, what do? There is as much satisfaction in saying no as there is in saying yes. If I know the outcome is what my brain wants, show me the outcome, and whatever I've determined my habits now are leading me to that outcome. So I can't dispute that everything I do feels like it's getting me there. Now it's so much easier for me to say no, as opposed to I didn't ever lay this out, so every shiny object was exciting.
Yeah.
And I can tell you there's as much reward in saying no. I get satisfied from saying no, which I used to have to say yes to get satisfied, because I've now defined the outcome and the path towards it, right? Just the same, the person with a high dopamine brain who's a binger, who gets stuck or who procrastinates, really needs their instructions broken down to micro. If you know your brain prioritizes by, they give me the instruction, the deadline, but you're also only going to focus on what you enjoy because you prioritize by what you want, and the other 8 things on the to-do list didn't get done. It's not, this is due on Friday. It's like the research is due on Monday. The graphics are due on Tuesday. Some friend reviewing it is due on Wednesday. Micro goals. And this is how I help CEOs actually get to the finish line without the anxiety, stress, and distraction. And they actually get things done faster, quicker, better, and unlock their superpower.
So you talk a lot about, the empowerment, the education, and then the action, these processes. I guess for me, what I'm curious about is sort of the things you talk a lot about, like what matters, the things that are really obvious and visible, and the things that maybe are more important that we don't realize in this process of, learning, getting empowered, education, and then what actions we can take. What are some things that really are impacting us that are maybe invisible, pretty invisible?
Yeah. So if you look at where do people actually experience longevity, like where on this planet are people living to 110, 115 with good health?
Right.
And we call them the blue zones, but there's also other cities that haven't been labeled yet, right? Yeah. And there are people that live a long life with good health consistently, right? And definitely one of the big things they do is community, people, and purpose. Right. In fact, in Japan, they call it ikigai, sense of purpose. And that's one of the reasons they live so long. The brain is never told time to retire. Right. So that's a big one. And I would say this sounds as like a simple answer, but food. And food, not as easy as I eat clean and I eat organic, but unlocking the superpowers that food can give us that we've lost, know?
The variety, diversity, the herbs, all of the...
Yeah. If you look at, for example, Japan, Okinawa, one of the areas we call blue zones, right? They eat something called purple sweet potato. So any purple food is rich in something called anthocyanin. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants we have in our food. There's research on so anthocyanin is also found in blueberries, right? And there's research on if you spend 1 year eating a cup of blueberries a day, your biological age of your brain would reverse by 12 years. That's how powerful anthocyanin is. What drug does that? Right? That's how powerful food can be. If you eat real food, a real wild berry that actually grew on a bush, that actually had to fight the wind and the cold, that produced polyphenols, and it was a very nutritious, valuable tool, versus something that grew in a lab or a greenhouse that had a comfortable, cushy life, that didn't need to build these defenses, that doesn't have the nutrients in it. Right? So what is food? Then you look at, our soil is like deplete of minerals. That's a big one. It's oversprayed. There's no minerals. When you and me used to walk to school, there'd be worms walking around when it rained, and you don't see them anymore. The soils it's sprayed and dead, right? So the worms would aerate and they would poop in what are called castings, and they would make the soil rich with microbial activity. And it was an ecosystem that was brilliant that doesn't exist anymore. So the minerals are missing. We think of minerals as like bone and teeth. If you remove the minerals from your body, all that's left is a puddle of water. Literally, right? So, and it's not just structural. It's also, fulvic. There's humic minerals and fulvic minerals. The fulvic minerals will enter your body, carrying nutrients along with them. They enter your cell with a sort of positive electric charge, and one of the few things that can actually cross the cell membrane. And then they release all these nutrients, and then they flip to a negative charge, and they start binding toxins and pulling them out. And our bodies take for granted that this is happening. It relies on this process. You're supposed to get fulvic minerals from the soil, and you're supposed to detoxify intracellularly by doing, which is those the free radicals from mitochondrial dysfunction. Maybe that guy wouldn't have had that problem if he ate enough minerals. The tennis player, right? And then you look at, the things we rely on, like medication, pills, and where does the science come from? And if we already have the tools, but we've lost the knowledge. So for example, if you look at spirulina, right? We see it as this beautiful superfood. It's neurostimulatory. If you scoop some spirulina, you might have some nice dreams at night because your brain is on, right? The pigment that makes blue spirulina blue is called phycocyanin. And if you take phycocyanin and throw it in a petri dish with cancer will die. It's that straightforward. Most chemotherapy is synthesized phycocyanin. So they've taken this thing that you can go eat and put it in a form which is patentable and trademarkable, right? Which comes with a lot of other problems that don't come from the natural food source.
Right.
So if you were to eat that regularly, and there's other plants like Paupera or Wolfeifloria that just grow that you can eat that kill cancer cells. So I'm not saying here's the treatment for cancer.
No,
right?
But you're talking about little things we can do.
Yeah.
It makes me more hopeful when I hear that, because also you're not the type. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could have easily had a whole other life.
Yeah.
This was accidental.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's so interesting for me to see somebody who has your type of processing, kind of sort of ramming through data and information and being like, well, this makes sense and this doesn't make sense. And then kind of applying this to kind of this holistic area. I find that very interesting.
I don't think there's coincidences, right? I think there's like, everybody's wired and has a purpose, and sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
To me, I don't feel like I work any day of the week. It's all purpose. It's like, that's why I can talk from morning till night.
Yeah.
Because it's like, am I just a conduit to some greater power that's providing the information, right? That's my role, my part of this fabric. That's my part. That's my little section, right? So yeah, I was given a tool. Now go benefit people with that tool.
Yeah.
And so starting with myself, then my family, then getting my friends off cholesterol pills, then working, and then it just kept going from there. And so when you find that, I don't feel like I work a day in my life anymore. Yeah. Right.
A lot of people are really concerned about dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
It's a big one. What's your feelings on this based on the work you're doing? This podcast has been brought to you by Laird Superfood. I know it's not fair. Laird Superfood was started in my kitchen, so yes, I'm excited to share it with you. It was started about 10 years ago. Not only does my entire family consume it, but Laird and I work on every product. What goes in the bag, the testing, we have really strict guardrails, but forget all that. It is so delicious. We've got coffees, Peruvian high altitude, low acidic coffees. We've got delicious creamers, bars, greens. But the thing I want to share with you today is our instant category. Now, a lot of times people think, oh, instant. Believe me, not only do we not sacrifice on ingredients, but it is so delicious and so convenient. So let's say you're on the go. Maybe you're working in an office or traveling on an airplane or maybe heading to college. I love our instant category so much because all you have to do is add hot water. If you like to ice your stuff, you can easily do that too, but it's so easy to use. It has high level coffee ingredients with our creamers. We've got instant latte, instant mocha, our latest instant vanilla latte. It is so delicious. I'm not a real vanilla girl, but I love this instant vanilla latte. Why? First of all, we use real vanilla. No natural flavors, no artificial flavors, no weird ingredients. Just incredible ingredients, MCT oil, so really nice for your energy, that sustained energy. You don't crash and kind of get like caffeine up and jittery down. Just a nice, smooth delivery. And again, it's so simple to use. All you do is add hot water wherever you are. So if you've never checked out Laird Superfood, by all means, see if what product suits your lifestyle the best. But I want to tell you, I love our instant products. And actually, pretty soon, in about 2 weeks, we're even going to have our instant pumpkin latte for those of you who like that little spicy bit. And if you're not a coffee drinker, I even have instant matcha, really, really trendy, and instant chai. And if you want to, head to lairdsuperfood.com. And if you put in the code GABBY20, so it's LAIRDSUPERFOOD.com. And don't forget to use the code GABBY, GABBY 20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. I promise you will find something that not only you love, but will make your life just a little tastier, easier, and more energized. The thought is like, okay, once you're kind of clicked in, you're in the game and you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
But if you can sort of keep it at bay, or you have an opportunity to sort of slow it down, what are you guys seeing?
So we've seen slow down reversal, right? And we've seen predict and prevent. If you know the why, you can predict and you can prevent. So first we got to move away from the belief that it's coming. Alzheimer's is in my family. No,
right.
Bad hardware is in your family. Bad mitochondrial function is. Now, what did you do with those pieces, right? Same with dementia. For example, there's a guy named Dr. Tom O'Brien. He's one of the pioneers of the functional medicine world. And he says that in California, where we are now, 66% of dementia is airborne. That doesn't mean it's a virus. It means the location, like the valleys where the pollution sits. And, if you go out for a walk in the hills, for 1 hour, it's equivalent to a pack of cigarettes, the inflammatory load from the pollution in the air in LA, right? If you're in the city.
Yeah.
So if that's how you live, where if you're in LA, you're within throw distance of a highway of some sort, right? The air is going to cause the inflammation to your brain, which will lead to what? The exact same thing I said about cardiovascular disease. If you have inflammation in your brain, your body's going to deploy cholesterol to fix it. When cholesterol gets to your brain, which was meant to be to solve an acute injury, but instead is now meeting a toxin, you start to oxidize and break that cholesterol molecule down, and it gets calcified and forms what we call amyloid plaque. And then amyloid plaque starts to kill your brain cells and starts to choke the brain. And eventually your behavior changes and you go to a doctor and says, I don't feel right. Oh, that looks like dementia, right? So where can this come from? It can come from, if you live in California, what you breathe. If you're not filtering air, careful with your plug-in air fresheners, all that type of thing. It can come from metabolic load. Where I live in Canada, Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes because most people get it from metabolic dysfunction. It can come from your gut. If your gut is dysbiotic like mine was, I had brain fog. And 8 years ago now, when I was sick at 38, I had intense brain fog. I don't have any brain fog now, right? And the leaky gut was leading to leaky brain because the toxins that can exit your gut wall, the blood-brain barrier doesn't recognize and doesn't know it should block them. It allows them in, and that causes brain inflammation. Another reason why you would have plaque, right? Another one is your hormones, which is why 80% of dementia is in women. Because that same toxic estrogen I talked about will cause brain inflammation, which is another problem that most men don't have to deal with. 80% of the research dollars go towards male-centric Alzheimer's research, but 80% of the problems are in females. And it's blamed on you're in menopause, you don't have enough estrogen, which is a contributor, but it's not the whole story, right? So now when you study the disease, people are studying it disease-centric. So they're looking at a gene called ApoE, the plaque gene, and saying you have a bad ApoE gene, your propensity is towards this. But that's the response to all these other choices that are made. Chronic disease is not a switch that turns on. It's a decade plus of choices that led to eventually can't sustain the defense against these choices, and then things fall. And this is why the average American gets their first chronic disease at 55, because like I said earlier, late 30s, your mitochondria start to deplete. At the age of 50, they fall off a cliff. Between the age of 50 and 70, you lose 70% of your mitochondria. They die and they shrink. if you don't do anything about it,
right,
which most people don't. So that's the age where the exact same things that your body was playing the game of borderline, I can handle this, all of a sudden symptomatic. Yeah. The level of inflammation shoots up and now it's disease territory.
Again, I really appreciate this idea of being empowered and proactive, but also not being afraid to, like, you got to get in there and take a look.
Yeah.
You know, so water, air quality, you know, you're all of it together. I think at times that feels overwhelming for people. So, do you retest yourself?
So your genes don't change.
So you know your kind of profile, and you're just tweaking, working within that.
I know what hurts me and what's good for me. Same thing I know for my kids. Mm-hmm. My mom is like grandma biohacker, right? So we work on her too. And so I know.
How has she changed in the last 8 years?
So what made me start this journey? I was sick.
Yeah.
And I used to visit my mom at her bedside because she couldn't get out of bed because of arthritis. She now goes to a gym with a trainer, right? It could have been a very different story. I believed she has arthritis and this is who she is and this is something that happens as you age. Yeah. But I learned same issues I had, she had. The software that leads to gut doesn't work, detox doesn't work, in combination with the hardware, which organ's going to fail first? Yeah, that's a bit of a crapshoot, right? So for her, it was joint health and arthritis, but she got out of it. It took about 6 months, and she did the work, like she, but she got out of it, and so she now drives my niece to school every day, right? And she couldn't get out of bed. Yeah. So
can we make an invitation to people, because I know a lot of people will want to get their tests done and really, again, go into, finding out what is working and not working for them, and making those changes. Maybe you could drive people to all the places that they can, if they want to get their tests done and do deeper work.
So the testing, I currently do it through my own personal site, right? And there's also a clinical practice. So whether it's somebody saying, hey, I want to work with that guy, me, which, it's possible, or it's like clinical programs, we have nutritionists, we have natural, all of that, right? Yeah. So right now my time goes into, like, I'm on retainer for all these sort of pro athlete, celebrity type people. They call me. Yeah. I have stress, check my DNA, tell me what to do, right? Yeah. That's what I do day to day. But we have a team that does everything you can imagine, right? So they can get their blood work done and they can read all about it. And then if they want to go deeper into, they can even get one of these people to help kind of translate. Yeah. And anybody can determine what they need. So we have people that will do like a full out 1 year deep dive. Let's go through every single molecule in my body and turn me into a superhuman. I'm doing that with a guy in Florida right now who didn't even know, this is coming out of his mouth, didn't know what the word organic meant a year ago, right? Really? Yeah. So he was... Did he have an event? What happened? Why did he did well financially, heard a couple of things out there that you don't need to be sick. He was not unhealthy, but he did a biological age test and he was in his early 60s and his biological age was 78. Oh. Now the guy looks good. Yeah, but... Right? But inflammation, immune function, all the stuff which he was just about to cross the line to disease. So he's like, well, how do I fix this? So, and really, if I were to say in a nutshell what I believe health is, it's biological age reversal. Yep. That's the measure of health. Combination of immune function, inflammation levels, methylation, brain function. If you take all that stuff and put an algorithm to it, which we do, and it calculates the biological age, that's the score. Right? All this other stuff is disease-centric. All the blood work we do, it's all markers for emergencies. It's already too late at that point. It's not that too late to fix it, but you're looking for the wrong stuff. Right? It's already broken. This is the right score. So that's what we think about. You're a little bit like a detective, though. It is literally detective work. That's exactly the best way to describe it. I was thinking when you were talking, I was like, he sounds like a detective. Yeah, that is exactly what it is, being a health detective. The funny thing is, that's what my clients call me. Oh, they really? And it came out of many mouths from different people. Health detective. No, right? It's 100%. Yeah. Remind people too, because I think people think that athletes are super healthy, and we're not. Yeah. We're beat up, and we do too much of a lot of times certain kinds of activities. And so I think also you said something really important that I want to highlight, that a lot of times people look a certain way, but those aren't all the indications
for like great health.
Yeah. Fitness and health are two different things.
Yes.
Right. Fitness is how do you look? What do you feel like?
Yeah.
Health is how long you're going to live and when is the disease starting?
Yeah.
Right.
And even just like how you feel, because a lot of times athletes are taught to muscle through.
Yeah. And I did here's a couple interesting examples. I did some work with the U.S. female Olympic team, right? There was a group
What sport?
Sorry?
Or just
in general.
Oh, okay.
Right? There was a year, I don't remember which year.
Okay, yeah.
This was pre-COVID.
But it was different athletes, different sports?
Different sports, different athletes, right? And so there was a question of, the two big questions were, some of these young women keep getting injured. What's going on? Right? Mm-hmm. The other question was, some of these young women in practice are incredible, but in tournament flop. And they thought it was this, right? So if we start with that one, again, the way to do the detective work is never to look for the thing that someone's complaining about, to look for what biology is broken and try and find how is that associated to their outcome. So what did I find consistently kept coming up in these young women that in tournament they failed? The genetics of what I said about my son, he's the worst amylase producer and starch metabolizer, the worst insulin response. They had the opposite. They thrived off of carbs. They were genetically wired to be fueled by carbs, which is completely counterintuitive to most of what we hear, right? And they went from local practice where they did what they want to tournament where there's like a head coach chef type situation where everybody was on this low carb diet and they thought, okay, cutting time, tournament time, I'll do it too. And they crashed. And their body not only did an okay job with carbs, but needed the carbs.
Yeah.
So you can actually identify who actually will thrive and need that particular fuel versus who should get rid of it. And it's that their exact nemesis. So that was one. We showed them that was it. They just need more carbs. And all of a sudden they went from can't function to winning medals because of one tweak, right? Second thing around the injuries. When we investigated it, the one sort of red flag was, did you guys notice, talking to their coaches, that the injuries keep happening in like week 3 of their menstrual cycle? That's not a coincidence, right? What did I say earlier about estrogen converts into a metabolite before it gets cleared in the period? Now, if you're making the toxic form, your body wants to keep it away from your organs, so it puts it in your fat. But it also puts it in your tendons and your ligaments, which makes them brittle. So the exact same training that was done on week 1 cannot be tolerated on week 3. Not for everybody, for that particular profile. Right? So when you bio-individual detective work, it's like everyone doesn't need to make these changes, but those particular women did need that change. So it's again a question of train different on that week, but also work on the detox of that hormone so it's not causing the inflammation to your tendons and ligaments. Right?
Is there a way prior to that 3rd week when they're supposed to be detoxing, things that you could be doing that just make that process?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Sulforaphane comes from broccoli sprouts. So sulforaphane will actually bind and remove it. And then DIM, which is also from mature broccoli, will stop the production of it, right? Then you can look at the glutathione pathway. In the safe bet, if somebody doesn't have their DNA, NAC and glycine are safe. But if you do have your DNA and you do a good job, I would use the glutathione. It's more powerful. You just need to know if you can, right?
That's right. What we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's so much to learn. Well, Kashif Khan, I'm so glad. I think the last time we talked was literally almost 5 years ago.
It was a while back. Yeah.
And I just really appreciate this work because I think, again, giving people just more tools and also the inspiration and the hope, because you said it too. Oh, I have this. Yeah. I think we're brought up into a world where it's like we get a label, a doctor tells us something, and I always say you name it and move it in, and that becomes a part of you. And this is an opportunity to remind people that that's not the case. No, should not be your identity. That is a red flag. If you have eczema, that's a check engine light. Your body's saying, go investigate. There's something wrong much deeper than your skin. Yeah. I just want to ask you one last thing, because we were talking about gratitude and, things not being able to be, sort of cohabitate in your brain at the same time. Is there anything that you do? I know, you know your genetics, but that you do in your physical practice or your recovery practice also that has been really supportive for you? Because you're doing a lot of things. You're a busy person. Yeah. You have a family, you're growing businesses. I mean, you're dealing with a lot. Is there other things you do that also just really support you? Yeah. So playtime is important, right? Mm-hmm. My calendar, there's 2 days a week in the evening that are when I play with kids, and that time is never compromised. Yeah.
Right. Not only for me, but for them. Right. Because I am busy and I do travel and I am away and all of that stuff. Right. And I will regret if I didn't do that later. Right.
Yeah.
Why are they there to not,
Yeah.
So that's one. And that nervous system release, that child play, that all of that stuff, I become one of them and I'm their buddy. Right.
Yep.
I pray a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And the work that I do, even when I think about, this, I know how to be healthier. Why am I doing it? It's not out of vanity. It's like the guys you mentioned before that are like, I'm going to live to 180, 200, whatever. That's not what I'm trying to do. To me, it is a practice of gratitude. I want to return this in the condition I got it in. Mm. And that to me is like, thank you for what I got, because a lot of people don't have that. Right?
Yes.
So for me, every day, the work that I do is gratitude. And it feels, so that truly fixed my nervous system because I was fried. Right?
Yeah.
Now it doesn't feel like that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people can just go to your website?
Yeah, I'll share that with you. It's my personal site. I'll share. And Instagram, if you want to hear tidbits and learn more stuff
and you've really kicked ass on your Instagram. You've grown it a ton.
I just went there to vent because I needed to talk somewhere. Yeah. 2 years ago, I didn't know what Instagram was.
Yeah.
And I think it's when it's authentic and I'm, telling people what they need to know. That's what happened. Yeah.
Well, Kashif, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Great being here.